like a pinhead stuck on the top of it. This to us is an indication that the head has been recarved. In other words, at some point in its long history, the head was redone.
John West believes the Sphinx was originally a huge lion, which an unknown group of sculptors carved out of rock before 10,500 BC. It became eroded when the end of the Ice Age upset the climate and caused rains to pour down for many centuries. Only thousands of years later would pharaohs carve its head into their own image. The Sphinx, more than twice as old as was thought until now. The theory is ridiculed by Egyptologists, but geologists simply tell them the facts are there. Stranger still, according to Robert Bauval, astronomical evidence suggests that the pyramids of Giza all seem to point to that incredible old age. The layout of Giza matches uncannily with the position of Orion in the year 10,500 BC, a time when the Sphinx looked at Leo, its own image in the skies. When Orion started a slow ascent through the epochs, signalling a new era. The setting of Orion at that distant date even corresponds precisely with the three small pyramids behind the pyramids themselves. And there are many other bewildering facts astronomy provides.
And this matches exactly with the geological analysis of the Sphinx. So there are two hard sciences now indicating that the Sphinx could be going back to 10,500 BC.
Egypt experienced major and dramatic changes at the end of the Ice Age, particularly about 10,500 BC, when very high, exceptionally high floods covered the floodplain, and it ended things both in the Delta and the Nile Valley in general.
10,500 BC, a time of floods. Could the designers of Giza point back to that distant time? The time their myths say that the god Osiris and his helpers ascended from chaos to bring first fruits of civilization. Where did they come from? A god who was very similar was lord of ancient Tiwanaku in Bolivia.
Here in this mysterious city of Tiwanaku, the god they worshipped, tall, bearded, described as white. Viracocha emerged in times of chaos and destruction from across the waters to bring some kind of renewal to the human race.
The white god Viracocha. In Mexico, he's called Quetzalcoatl, who came with others to bring the first fruits of knowledge. His symbol is all over Teotihuacan.
The feathered serpent, symbol of the enigmatic god Quetzalcoatl, who came from the east after times of tremendous cataclysm to bring civilization to this part of the world.
Could gods like Osiris, Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl have been real people who came from afar? Survivors of a cataclysm that had destroyed their homes and civilization?
Now, the question we're asking is this. Was there some remote civilization, as yet unidentified, that touched Egypt, Mexico, and South America, and left its imprint, however difficult to discern, in a body of knowledge? Now, taken in isolation, I agree. Each bit of evidence reveals little, but let's consider all these common elements together.
Both sides had huge pyramids, precisely aligned to the cardinal points, incorporating sophisticated knowledge of mathematics. Both demonstrated an astounding knowledge of astronomy, expressed in the great sacred monuments they both erected. Although they knew neither pulley nor wheel, both could build using huge stones finely jointed, in a unique style of construction with L-shaped corners and metal clamps. And both cultures used the process of mummification to preserve and honor their dead. Here a new astounding clue was found when Dr. Balabanova of the German University of Ulm discovered to her surprise that many mummies from Egypt contained cocaine and nicotine, indigenous to South America.
Ich habe eine Reihe von Briefen bekommen, die fast gefährliche Briefe waren, beleidigende Briefe, dass das alles eine Unfug ist, dass das Fantasie ist, dass das absolut unmöglich ist. Es ist nachgewiesen, dass diese Pflanze vor Kolumbus nirgendwo in der ganzen Welt außer Amerika vorhanden waren.
But her research was repeated on hundreds of mummies and proved beyond refute. Did, in some distant past, seafarers indeed cross the seas and influence the cultures on both sides of the Atlantic? The thought is even suggested by what is not there: Mexico, the ancient culture of the Mayas.
The Mayan priests had tables for predicting the eclipses of the sun and the moon, yet there was something very odd about the Mayans. They never even grasped the simple principle of the wheel. They were able to visualize eternity as no previous civilization could, thinking in terms of millions of years, and yet they never learned to weigh a sack of grain. This sophisticated civilization finally died because they didn't develop the simple agricultural methods to feed their own people. Now, what I'm suggesting is it possible that they simply inherited a specific part of their knowledge from some much earlier and wiser civilization?
Contact. Sometimes the evidence is there for all to see. The ancient Olmecs in Mexico gave their rulers the face of an African.
And how about this, carved by these same Olmecs? It's genetically impossible for Indians to have beards, and yet you have this face of a white Caucasian male carved perhaps 2,000 years before the Spaniards first came to the New World. So, faces of Africans and Caucasians carved many centuries before Columbus. Where did they come from? How did they get here? How did they come to influence the most ancient culture of Central America, the mother culture of Mexico? All that archaeologists know is that they suddenly materialized, fully evolved about 1500 BC. No sign of a development phase. These people, whose characteristic expression was the carving of huge stone heads of Caucasian and Africans, seem to have come out of nowhere.
Oaxaca, the ancient citadel of Monte Alban.
Here, further to the south in Mexico, is what seems to be the last record of these mysterious men. For these figures carved in stone seem to represent men who've been slain in battle, naked, forlorn, most of them castrated. This may be the point where